I know exactly how it sounds when you strip it down to one sentence. I told his mom he was nothing like his father, and she repeated every word to him. You don't even need the rest of the story. People hear that and instantly decide who I am. Ungrateful, disrespectful, mean. The wife who compared her husband to his own father and then cried when it blew up. And I can't even defend myself properly because the core is true. I did say it, I did mean it in that moment, and his mother really did repeat every word. But if I'm being honest, it didn't feel that cruel when it was still just thoughts in my head. In my head, it was venting, processing my feelings, being honest with another woman who gets it. Out loud in his mother's kitchen, over tea and sympathy, what I said was this: he's nothing like you or his father. They're both real men. He just isn't. And that's the sentence that ripped my life in half. If you'd met us at the very beginning, you'd never guess I'd end up being that wife. The one who calls her husband not a real man behind his back. When we got married, I thought I'd lucked out. His name is Ethan, soft-spoken, clever, a little awkward. He wasn't the loudest guy in the room, but he was the one who remembered what book you said you liked 6 months ago and bought you a special edition for your birthday. He didn't come from money, but his family wasn't struggling either. His parents had worked hard for what they had. His father, Mark, is what most people would call solid. Former military, then construction, then ran his own small company. Big hands, steady eyes, that quiet presence people trust. The kind of man who can fix a leaking pipe, jumpstart a car, grill a steak properly, and talk to neighbors about property taxes in one afternoon. The kind of man who wakes up at 6 a.m. without an alarm and already has half a to-do list done before you've even had coffee. His mum, Linda, is the other sort of solid, the emotional backbone, the one who remembers birthdays, hosts everyone, and never forgets who takes their coffee how. They're the kind of couple people point at and say, "That's what I want someday." It's sickeningly unfair that I got that someday and still managed to break it. Because when I say Ethan was nothing like his father, I don't mean he was trash. He just wasn't that. Where his father was broad-shouldered, sun-browned, hands calloused from real work, Ethan was softer, paler, more indoors. He writes code. He works with screens, not steel. He sleeps in. He forgets oil changes. He hates yard work. Where his father speaks with certainty, Ethan talks in maybes and probabilities and, to be fair, speeches. His dad can walk into a room, shake 3 hands, and have a barbecue planned by the end of a conversation. Ethan walks into a room, finds the dog, and hides by the chips table. At first, I found that adorable, charming, a relief after men who constantly needed to prove they were in charge. But time is a cruel mirror. The things that feel cute at the start can start feeling insufficient. The first time I saw Ethan and his father side by side in work clothes, carrying lumber from the truck, I noticed the differences, not just in how they looked, in how people responded to them. Neighbors would wave at Mark from across the street. Contractors would call him Sir and ask his opinion. With Ethan, people smiled politely, then looked past him for his dad. I told myself it didn't matter, until, slowly, it started to. These stories never sound fair, because by the time you hit the big sentence, "He's nothing like his father," you skip the 1,000 smaller cuts that came before it. So here's some of mine. There was the time the kitchen sink backed up, water everywhere, dripping into the cabinet, soaking the cleaning supplies. I stared at Ethan with that desperate, "Can you fix this?" look. He stared back at it like it was a ransomware virus. "I'll call a plumber," he said. "We can't afford a plumber this week," I cried. "Just try." He did. To be fair to him, he really did. Watched 3 YouTube videos, took apart half the pipes, swore under his breath. An hour later, there was more mess, no solution, and him saying, "Okay, this is beyond me." I called Mark. He showed up in old jeans, a toolbox in hand, and fixed it in 20 minutes. He didn't sigh. He didn't brag. He wiped his hands, patted Ethan on the shoulder, and said, "Next time, watch this step. You'll get it." He meant well. I know that. But I watched Ethan shrink 2 inches under that pat. I watched him go quiet. And a tiny mean part of me thought, yeah, why can't you just do it like he does? Then there was the car. I've never cared much about brands, but I do care about safety. The old clunker we drove started making noises that sounded like it was coughing up its last breath. I said, "We need to get this checked, or replaced." Ethan checked our savings and said, "We can't yet. We'll risk it another month." Another month turned into 3. Every strange sound from the engine felt like playing Russian roulette. One afternoon, Mark came by, heard the car start, turned around and frowned. "That sound isn't nothing," he said. "I know," I replied pointedly, looking at Ethan. Ethan flushed. "We're saving up," he muttered. "Why didn't you say something?" Mark asked. "Let me see what I can do at the dealership I use." Within a week, we had a decent used car at a price we couldn't have gotten on our own. Mark had made calls, pulled strings, talked like one of those men who just know how the world works. And Ethan had stood beside him, nodding, hands in his pockets, quiet. I thanked Mark profusely. I kissed Ethan that night and said, "I wish you'd told him earlier instead of letting us drive that death trap." He pulled away. "I don't want to be the useless son who runs to his dad for everything," he snapped. I was trying to handle it. "But you didn't," I said. "He did." We both regretted the argument pretty quickly, but I didn't regret the thought. It settled somewhere in me and stayed. Then there were the little moments, barbecues, where Mark manned the grill with ease while Ethan hovered near the salads. Family discussions about finances, where Mark and Linda nodded confidently about retirement plans, while Ethan frowned at his spreadsheet on his phone. Times when something broke, something needed a decision, something difficult needed facing. And my first instinct wasn't to look at my husband. It was to think, what would his father do? I didn't say it out loud, not at first, but the comparison became the quiet soundtrack in the back of my mind. Mark is dependable. Mark is solid. Mark is a real man. Ethan is smart, sweet, gentle, thoughtful, but not quite that. And instead of dealing with that like a grown woman, by examining my own expectations, my own shallow biases, my own willingness to equate masculinity with handyman skills, I did what I do best. I pushed it down until it came out sideways, in jokes, in tone. In comments I pretended were harmless. "You know your dad's probably lifted more today than you have all month," I'd say. Or, "I swear your dad has more energy than both of us combined." They don't make men like that anymore. Ethan would joke back at first. "Sorry I don't come with a drill and a tool belt," he'd say. But over time the joke stopped landing. He'd go quiet, leave the room, change the topic. I noticed. I just didn't stop. Linda isn't the stereotypical monster mother-in-law people love telling horror stories about. She wasn't trying to replace me. She didn't try to keep her son all to herself. If anything, she overextended herself trying to make me feel included, cooking my favorite meals when we came over, dragging me into family photos, sending me links to recipes or sales she thought I'd like. She also has that one dangerous trait. She genuinely believes honesty fixes things. She doesn't keep secrets in the family. If she hears something worrying, she doesn't sit on it. She doesn't gossip sideways. She goes straight to the person and says, "We have to talk about this." It's one of the things I used to admire about her. Until it ruined me. The day everything snapped started small. I'd had a bad week, work stress, bills piling up, Ethan working late every night on a project, too tired to talk, eat properly, or notice that I'd tidied the whole damn apartment. He'd come home, mumble, "Hey," kiss the air near my cheek, then collapse on the couch with his laptop. Meanwhile, I was drowning in quiet. He didn't do anything wrong exactly. He just stopped showing up for me emotionally. The comparison monster in my head had plenty of material. Mark still brought Linda flowers, just because. He still took her out once a month, called it their date day. He still fixed things before they broke, checked the cars before winter, changed filters, winterized pipes, all that practical magic that made life smoother. Ethan, by contrast, forgot the trash until it overflowed. He'd say, "Oh, I'll fix that later," and then 3 days passed. He'd nod when I talked instead of actually listening. I told myself I was allowed to be hurt, which is true. What I wasn't allowed to do, but did anyway, was weaponize that hurt in front of his mother. Linda called that Saturday morning. "Hey, sweetheart," she said. "I made way too much lasagna. Do you and Ethan want to come by for lunch?" "Ethan's working," I said automatically. "Well, then you come," she said. "I hate wasting food. I'll send you home with leftovers. We'll talk." I hesitated. I knew going there meant opening myself up to questions. Linda never does small talk only, but I also didn't want to sit alone in the apartment all afternoon listening to the clack of Ethan's keyboard. "Okay," I said. "I'll come by around 1. "Perfect," she said. "The door will be open." The door is always open there. That's what makes it feel like a home. And what made it so easy for my words to walk in and tear everything apart. Linda's kitchen smells like garlic and tomato and something sweet baking, always. It smelled like that day too. The table was half covered in bowls and a big glass dish of bubbling lasagna. "Sit," she said, waving me in. "You look tired." "Thanks," I muttered, flopping into a chair. She slid a plate in front of me, then sat down across from me with her own. We ate quietly for a few minutes. Then she did what she always does. "So," she said lightly, "how are you doing? Really?" The really is the trap. I toyed with my fork. "I'm fine," I said automatically. She gave me the look. You know the one. The, "you are lying and I'm old enough to know it" look. I sighed. "It's just been a long week," I said. "Work's stressful, money things, adult life, you know." She nodded. "And you and Ethan?" she asked gently. "You two okay?" The right answer would have been, "We're stressed, but we're fine. I'm a little hurt, he's a little distant, we're working on it." The honest but kind answer would have been, "We're struggling a bit. I feel disconnected. I wish he'd be more present. I don't know how to talk to him about it properly." Instead, I gave the honest but poisoned answer. "We're stuck," I said. "I feel like I'm married to a roommate who happens to sleep in my bed. He works, he stares at screens, he forgets to notice me. I feel like nothing is getting done unless his dad does it. Like, if something breaks, we call Mark. If something scary happens, we call Mark. If the car makes a noise, we call Mark. I'm tired of feeling like I'm married to the understudy of the man you actually raised." Linda's fork froze halfway to her mouth. I kept going, momentum carrying me off a cliff. "I know that sounds awful," I rushed. "I'm not trying to be cruel, I'm just tired. Ethan is so different from Mark, from you. You and Mark are doers. You notice things. You fix them before they explode. You're, I don't know, real adults, real grown-ups, real man, real woman. And Ethan is—" I searched for words, picked the worst ones. "Nothing like his father," I finished. "Not in the ways that matter." Silence, the kind that buzzes. Linda set her fork down slowly. "What do you mean, the ways that matter?" she asked. I felt that flush rise in my neck. "I mean," I said, waving a hand, "the practical stuff, the leadership, the taking initiative. I don't want to be his mum. I want to feel like I have a partner who sees problems and handles them. Ethan waits. He avoids. He disappears into his laptop and hopes things magically fix themselves." "That's not fair," she said quietly. "He works hard." "I know he does," I snapped, then immediately regretted the tone. "I know he provides. I'm not saying he's lazy in general. I'm saying, It feels like everything that isn't his job is optional to him. And then your husband swoops in like some hero and handles everything. And I stand there thinking, so this is what it's supposed to look like. Linda's jaw tightened. Mark has 25 years on him, she said. He didn't start out knowing everything. He learned. Slowly, with help. Are you giving Ethan any room to learn? Her question hurt, mostly because I didn't want to answer it. I am trying, I insisted. But how long do I have to wait for him to become someone he's clearly not? I'm tired of telling my friends, oh yeah, his dad came over again to fix something. I'm tired of feeling like I married the beta version of a man I actually see working in this house. As soon as I said it, my stomach dropped. Beta version. Nothing like his father. Not a real man. I had never put it all together like that out loud. It sounded so much uglier in the air. Linda's eyes went from shock to something else, something steelier. You really think that? She asked, voice controlled. I scrambled backward verbally. I'm venting, I said quickly. I'm emotional. I know he's a good man. I know he's kind and smart and generous. I'm just tired of feeling like the only adult in my own house sometimes. I'm tired of hearing you and Mark talk about real men and realizing my husband doesn't fit that definition in my head anymore. She stared at me. I stared at the nearest crumb on the table, wishing I could rewind 5 minutes. You know, she said slowly, I remember when you started dating. You told me once that one of the things you loved most about Ethan was that he wasn't like his father, that he was softer, gentler, that you felt safe with him in a way you hadn't with men like Mark. I was in a different place then, I said weakly. And now, she asked. Now I'm older, I replied. More tired, less romantic. You look at your life differently when bills are due and pipes are bursting. She nodded once. Right, she said. We ate in silence after that, but the food tasted like cardboard. I tried to steer the conversation somewhere else, but it just drifted, empty. After 30 minutes, I pretended I had a headache and needed to go lie down. I'll just put together some leftovers for you, she said. You go sit in the living room. I left my plate in the sink and wandered to the couch, my phone in my hand. Already regretting half of what I'd said, I told myself it was fine. Mothers vent to daughters-in-law. Daughters-in-law vent to mothers-in-law. She knows I'm emotional. She knows Ethan's flaws. She knows marriage is hard. I didn't yet understand that Linda's loyalty has a very specific hierarchy. Husband, then children. Everyone else comes after, including me. While I scrolled aimlessly through social media, trying to distract myself from the taste of my own words, Linda was in the kitchen, staring at her phone. I didn't know that until later, but now I imagine it clearly. She wipes the counter, paces once, looks at the doorway where I'd just gone, looks at the family photo on the wall. Ethan, graduation cap askew, her arm around him, Mark's hand on his shoulder. She sighs, opens her contacts, taps Ethan. He's at his desk at home, headphones on, when his phone buzzes. He sees Mom, removes one ear cup. Hey, Mom, he says, glancing at the clock. Everything okay? I need to talk to you, she says. Now. He straightens. What's wrong? He asks. I'm with your wife, she says. You need to come over. My chest tightens imagining that. Because I know what that sentence does to a man. I'm with your wife. You need to come over. You hear that, and your brain fills in every bad possibility. Someone's hurt. Someone's sick. There's a secret. There's an affair. He must have felt his heart drop. He must have asked, is she okay? And she must have said the line she later told me about. She's safe, Linda said, but your marriage might not be. He was in his car 5 minutes later. I didn't know any of this when I walked into the kitchen with my empty glass and said, I think I'm going to head out, Linda. Thanks for lunch. She looked at me with a strange expression, not unkind, but distant. Stay, she said, just for a little while longer. I frowned. Everything okay? I asked. Ethan's on his way, she replied. My stomach flipped. Why? I asked carefully. Because I don't keep things from my son that will hurt him, she said. My throat went dry. What did you do? I whispered. What you should have done yourself, she said quietly. I told him we need to talk. Together. The room started to tilt. You called him, I stammered. Yes, she said. And you're going to tell him what? Everything I said? I asked. I'm going to tell him enough, she replied. Enough that he understands why his wife sits in my kitchen and says he's nothing like his father, and not a real man in the ways that matter. I went cold. I didn't say he wasn't a real man, I protested. I said. You said, she cut in, eyes sharp now, that you're tired of feeling like you married the beta version of the man you actually see working in this house. I flinched, hearing it like that, repeated, stripped of tone and context, and all the messy emotions I had woven around it. It sounded worse. I was venting, I said weakly. You asked me to be honest. I did, she said, and I won't punish you for being honest with me. But it would be a betrayal of him to sit on that honesty and let him live in a marriage where his wife secretly despises the man he is. Despises? I choked. I don't despise him. I love him. Do you? She asked, not unkindly. Or do you love who you think he could be if he turned into a copy of his father? I opened my mouth, closed it. He deserves to know what you told me, she said. That's the least I owe my son. My heart pounded so hard my fingertips felt numb. You can't just tell him everything, I said. He'll hear it wrong. He'll take it the worst way. She gave me a long, steady look. Then maybe, she said, you shouldn't have said it that way. Headlights cut across the front window. We both turned. Ethan's car. Time was up. The front door opened a minute later. Mom, Ethan called, stepping inside. In here, Linda replied, voice calm. He walked into the kitchen, still in his work clothes, t-shirt, sweats, laptop bag still slung over his shoulder. Our eyes met, his brows knit. What's going on? He asked. Linda gestured to the table. Sit, she said. The last time she'd used that tone with him, he'd been 16. He sat, across from me, browser of my sins. I could feel my pulse in my throat. Your mother thinks we need to talk, I said, trying to inject some lightness into my voice. She didn't smile. I'm going to say this once, Linda began, folding her hands, and then I'm not going to referee the rest. I'll leave you two to talk. She took a breath. Your wife is unhappy, she said simply. She feels you're checked out. She feels she's carrying the mental and emotional load alone. That's normal sometimes. Marriage goes through rough patches, but what concerns me is not that she's unhappy. It's how she chose to express it. Ethan's eyes flicked to me. What did you say? He asked, voice tighter. I opened my mouth. Linda spoke first. She said, Linda continued, looking at him now, that she's tired of feeling like everything that isn't your job is optional to you. That when something breaks, when there's a crisis, it's always Mark who steps in. That she feels more like your mother than your wife. He flinched. But the part you need to hear most, she said softly, is this. She told me, and I'm quoting, that you are nothing like your father in any of the ways that matter. That she feels like she married the beta version of the man she actually sees working in this house. Silence. Complete, suffocating silence. Ethan's face went blank. No expression, no anger, just blank. I wanted to sink into the floor. Mum, he said after a second, voice strangely calm. Are you sure those were her words? She didn't flinch. Yes, she said. I wrote them down the moment she went to the living room, so I wouldn't soften them to protect either of you. She slid a folded napkin across the table. There, in her neat handwriting, were my worst moments immortalized. Real adult, underlined. Real man, circled. Nothing like his father in ways that matter. Beta version. Ethan picked up the napkin, stared at it, his jaw clenched. He didn't look at me. Linda stood. "That's all I came to say," she said. "I'm going to give you 2 privacy now." She squeezed his shoulder as she walked past him, then left the room. I heard her car start 10 minutes later. She didn't stay in the house she'd just set on fire. She left us in the smoke. For a long moment, Ethan didn't say anything. He just stared at the napkin. My heart was beating in my ears. "Ethan," I began softly. She asked me how we were. I was upset. It came out harsher than I... He held up a finger. I stopped. He read the words again. Then he folded the napkin carefully, like it was something delicate. Finally, he looked up at me, and what I saw in his eyes scared me far more than rage would have. Clarity. "You chose your audience well," he said quietly. "What?" I asked, thrown. "If you wanted to hurt me in the deepest, most efficient way," he continued, "you picked the right person to say this to. My mother, the woman who has watched me spend my whole life trying and failing to live up to my father in ways I can't even name. The woman who has watched me struggle with that and helped me stop measuring myself by his tape." His voice didn't rise. It stayed calm. That made every word sharper. "You could have told me," he said. "You could have said, 'I feel like you're not stepping up. I need you to be more present. I'm tired.' You could have spoken to me like a partner. Instead, you went to the woman who created both of us and told her that the son she raised is the discounted knockoff of the man she married." "It wasn't like that," I protested weakly. "I was venting." She pushed for honesty. "You meant it," he said simply. "You might not have meant it forever. You might regret it now that it's out. But you meant it when you said it. People don't accidentally string words like beta version together." I swallowed. He leaned back, exhaled. "You've been comparing me to my dad for months," he said, in jokes, in little comments, talking about how he dresses, how he fixes things, how he takes care of your car, your leaks, your anything. I pretended it didn't bother me because I didn't want to look weak. I didn't want to be the guy who whines that his wife admires his father too much. I told myself you just admired him as a father figure, that you were being dramatic. "I do admire him," I said. "I admire you both. Just in different..." "You admire him as a man," he said flatly. "You endure me as a project." The words punched the air out of my lungs. "That's not true," I whispered. "I love you. I married you." "Do you?" he asked, tilting his head. "Or did you marry the idea that one day I'd grow into someone like him, stronger, handier, more decisive, more... whatever it is that you call real man. And now that it's clear I won't magically transform, you feel cheated?" "That's not..." He slapped the folded napkin lightly against the table. "This," he said, "is not something a woman says about a man she respects. Not in these words, not to his mother." Tears blurred my vision. "I was tired," I said, frustrated. "I feel like I'm drowning in the invisible work of our life and you're just... floating." I reached for the sharpest example I could, and your dad was right there. I know it was ugly. I know I shouldn't have said it like that. "So you admit it," he said softly. "You meant to be sharp." "Yes," I breathed. "Yes, I was trying to hurt someone. Not you. Myself, maybe. Or the situation. I don't know. I wanted someone to see how tired I am. I wanted someone to get it." "And did it help?" he asked. "Do you feel better now? Does your life feel lighter, knowing you've created a version of me in my mother's head that looks like a disappointed child sitting next to his father's throne?" I broke then. The sobs came hard and fast. "I was stupid," I cried. "I know I was. I know I was cruel. I know I picked the worst possible words, the worst possible person, the worst possible way. I can't take it back. I can only apologize and ask you to not throw everything away because I used the nuclear button in a moment of exhaustion." He watched me for a long moment. His face remained unreadable. Then he stood up. "It's strange how heavy a suitcase looks when you know you didn't pack it." He walked past me, down the hall. I heard the closet door slide open, hangers clinking, the zipper of a suitcase. drawers opening and closing. I sat frozen in my chair, staring at the folded napkin. When he came back, he was dragging my large suitcase. It was full. He set it by the doorway, just like Noah had in that other story that still lived on my tongue. "What are you doing?" I whispered. He didn't answer. He went back down the hallway, came back with my smaller bag, set it on top of the big one. Finally, he spoke. "I'm not going to scream at you," he said. "I'm not going to call you names or throw things or make this uglier than it already is. You've already humiliated me to the one person whose opinion about me I've spent my whole life negotiating. I'm not going to give you a screaming match on top of that." My tears blurred his outline. "You're kicking me out," I said numbly. He nodded. "For now," he said. "Maybe forever. I don't know yet, but I know I can't sleep next to someone who says I'm nothing like my father, in the ways that matter, then calls me dramatic when I react." "I didn't call you dramatic," I protested. "I called myself emotional." "You always do," he said with a humorless smile. "You hide behind your feelings like a get-out-of-jail-free card. I was venting. I was tired. I was emotional. As if those phrases erase the damage your words do." "I'm trying to explain," I pleaded. He shook his head. "No," he said. "You're trying to write a nicer version of what already happened, but the raw version is right here." He tapped the napkin. "And in here," he added, tapping his temple. "And in my mother's hands," he finished, pointing vaguely toward the door. I stood, legs shaky. "Where am I supposed to go?" I asked, hating how small I sounded. "To the people you're honest with, apparently," he said. "Call a friend. Call your parents. Go stay with someone you trust enough to tell them I'm a disappointment." I'm not going to argue semantics," he cut in. "You said I'm nothing like my father in the ways that matter. You said you feel like you married the beta version. That's enough." He walked to the front door, opened it. Cold air slipped in. "You can leave your key on the table," he said softly. It was the softness that broke me. I grabbed his arm. "Please," I whispered, "please don't do this. Don't make a permanent decision on a temporary hurt." He looked down at my hand, then gently removed it from his arm. "It stopped being temporary the moment I realized this isn't new," he said. "You've been thinking this way for a while. Today you just said it out loud. My mother didn't create this. She just turned the volume up so I could hear the song you've been replaying in your head." I let go. My fingers twitched. He stepped aside. "When you figure out whether you love me or the idea of me turning into my dad," he said, "you can ask if there's anything left to fix. Until then, I'm not going to be the man you resent for not being someone else." The words settled on my shoulders like lead. I picked up the suitcase handle. Each wheel bump on the tile sounded like a verdict. At the doorway, I paused. "You're not your father," I said weakly. "That's true, but that doesn't mean you're less. I didn't know how to say I needed more from you without comparing." He nodded once. "That," he said, "is what therapy is for, not my mother's kitchen." Then he gently closed the door. On me, on us, on the version of our marriage where I could say whatever I wanted and always be taken back because I was upset. Linda, true to form, didn't say anything publicly. She didn't post cryptic status updates. She didn't send out a mass text. But the story spread anyway. It always does. Within hours, I started getting messages. His sister, Hannah. "Did you seriously tell Mom that Ethan is nothing like Dad in the ways that matter? Are you kidding me?" His cousin, Jake. "I always thought you were good for him. Guess I was wrong." Imagine calling someone beta to his own mother. Wild. His Aunt Marie. "You know Mark worships Ethan, right? Hearing that from you must have killed him. I hope you're proud." My own mother texted after Linda spoke to her. She says you compared Ethan to his father in front of her. What on earth were you thinking? Do you want to throw your marriage away? I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to say, I didn't mean it like that. I was talking about effort, not worth. I was exaggerating. It was taken out of context. But the truth is, the context made it worse, not better. I hadn't said it in the middle of a fight, in the heat of an argument with Ethan. I had said it calmly, over lunch, over lasagna and tea. Not as a weapon thrown in defense, as a diagnosis. That's harder to walk back. I didn't talk to Mark for weeks. I couldn't. Every time I pictured him, I saw his face when Linda must have told him what I said. His wife recounting my words. His son, sitting there, hearing that the woman he married measures him against his father and finds him lacking. I made it 3 weeks before I ran into him accidentally. I was leaving a grocery store, arms full, hood up, trying to become invisible, when I heard my name. Hey, Mark. Leaning against his truck, groceries already loaded. My whole body went stiff. Hi, I managed. We stood there, half blocking the parking spot, cars awkwardly squeezing past. He looked at me the way a man looks at a cracked foundation he once trusted. I'm not going to yell at you, he said. That's not my place. Ethan's a grown man. This is his to handle. But I'm going to say this once because I think you need to hear it. I braced myself. I am not the standard, he said quietly. I'm just a man who got older. I've made a ton of mistakes. I've failed Linda in more ways than you know. The only reason I look like some damn hero to you is because you're seeing the edited version. The version that learned after 40 years of messing up. I frowned. I know you're not perfect, I said. That's not... You treat me like I am, he cut in. You talk about me like I am. That's the problem. You put me on some pedestal and use me like a stick to hit my son with. I didn't ask you to do that. I don't want you to do that. I can't stand watching the two of you live in a house where he's constantly being measured against a man you've barely seen argue with his wife. His voice stayed level, but his knuckles were white around his keys. I didn't mean, I started. You did, he said. Maybe not forever. Maybe not with your whole soul. But you meant it enough to say it. And I refuse to let you pretend you accidentally strung those words together. You're smarter than that. Tears stung my eyes. He sighed. I love my son, he said. I'm proud of him. Not because he can fix pipes or negotiate car deals, but because he works on himself in ways I never did at his age. He goes to therapy. He talks about his feelings. He treats his wife with more gentleness than I treated his mother at 30. If you can't see that as a real man, then maybe the problem isn't him. The shame hit so hard I swayed. I'm sorry, I whispered. I am. I've said it to Ethan. I'm saying it to you. I'm so deeply sorry. He nodded. I believe you're sorry, he said. I also believe you can't unsay it. That's what Ethan is dealing with now, and I can't fix it for him. God knows I wish I could, but this is his. My voice came out quieter than I meant. Do you hate me? I asked. He looked at me for a long moment. I don't hate you, he said. I think you're lost. I think you're hurt. I think you tried to use my name as leverage to get the man I raised to change faster than he's able. But I also think you crossed a line that may not be uncrossable, and whether that line breaks for good or not, that's not my call. He opened his truck door. One more thing, he said, pausing. If you stay with my son, do it because you love him as he is, not because you hope he'll turn into me. He won't, and he shouldn't have to. Then he got in and drove away, leaving me in the parking lot with my groceries and my guilt. Ethan and I didn't divorce overnight. Real life isn't that clean. He let me stay with my sister for a while. We talked, fought, cried, sat in silence. He went to therapy alone, then invited me. Sometimes he answered my texts. Sometimes he didn't. We tried separation. We tried space. We tried circling back to the beginning, looking for the place where admiration turned into resentment. I don't know yet how our story ends. We're still in it. Some days it feels like we might actually heal this. Slowly, clumsily, with 1,000 apologies and 1,000 small new choices. Other days, it feels like there's a crack we can't plaster over. The knowledge that when asked to describe my husband in his mother's kitchen, I reached not for kindness or nuance, but for the most cutting comparison I could think of. That I said, out loud, that he was nothing like his father in the ways that matter, and his mother repeated every word. People love tidy morals, so here's mine. I didn't lose my husband to another woman. I didn't lose him to an affair, or a secret, or a betrayal of the body. I risked losing him to something far quieter and more insidious, the way I talked about him when he wasn't in the room, the way I turned his father into a yardstick and measured him against it until he came up short, the way I used honesty as an excuse to be cruel, the way I chose the worst possible person to confide in and then acted shocked when she chose her son over me. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: you can't keep calling a man less than, even in jokes, even in venting, even in girl talk, and expect him to never hear it, because someone will always repeat your words. Maybe his mother, maybe his friend, maybe just his own brain, finally connecting the dots between your sighs, your eye rolls, your innocent comparisons. And when he does hear it, he may not yell, he may not throw things, he may not turn into the monster you secretly want him to be so you can blame him entirely. He might do what Ethan did: fold your words like a napkin, pack your suitcase, open the door, and walk away from the version of himself you tried to shrink to fit your idea of a real man. Leaving you alone with the one thing you swore you wanted, your honesty, unedited, unsoftened, echoing in an empty kitchen his mother will never unhear.